A dark secret unfolds in a quiet town. I returned from the campaign trail to find strangers living in my house, a house I never sold. The screen cuts to a shadowy figure passing forged documents. As the newly elected governor, they thought they could intimidate me. Quick flashes of heated confrontations and secretive meetings fill the screen. They were wrong. Her determined face is lit by the flicker of a burning document. HOA illegally sold my home I bought 50 years ago. Finds I'm governor. Who has the power, if not the deceived and the betrayed? The screen plunges into darkness, leaving a chilling echo. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. After months of grueling campaigning, all I craved was the comfort of my home. The quiet whisper of my backyard trees, the familiar creak of the porch swing, these were the sounds I dreamed of amidst the relentless debates and ceaseless travel. But as I turned into my driveway, a gut-wrenching scene unfolded before me. A moving van blocked the view of my beloved porch, and strangers bustled about, carrying boxes into what had been my refuge for the last 50 years. I parked my car with shaking hands and stepped out, my heart pounding in disbelief. The lead mover, a burly man with a sweat-stained shirt, noticed my bewilderment and paused, a box labeled kitchen stuff in his hands. "Can I help you?" he asked, his brow furrowing. "This is my house," I stammered, the words tasting strange in my mouth. "What are you doing here?" The man set down the box and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. "Ma'am, we have orders to move this family in today. Maybe there's been some mistake." Mistake. The word echoed in my mind as panic surged through my veins. I rushed past him the front door, finding it unlocked. Inside, the walls were bare, the rooms echoed with emptiness, devoid of all my belongings, all my memories. I felt a chill as the reality set in. This was no mistake. The new occupants were a young couple who looked up in surprise as I burst in. The woman, holding a framed photo, approached me cautiously. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "Who are you? Why are you in my house?" My voice broke, the room spinning around me. The couple exchanged a worried glance before the man spoke up. "We bought this house last month from the homeowners association. They said the previous owner had moved to a nursing home." I gasped, my mind reeling. The HOA had no right. I had never missed a payment, had never breached a single covenant, and I was certainly not in a nursing home. This had to be a mistake, a terrible, horrible mistake. "I am the owner of this house," I declared, my voice steadying with resolve, "and I certainly did not sell it." The couple looked as shocked as I felt, and the woman put down the photo, stepping closer. "We had no idea," she murmured. "We went through a realtor. Everything seemed legitimate." Fury and fear knotted in my stomach as I pulled out my phone to call my lawyer. But then I paused. This couple was as much a victim as I was, if what they said was true. My eyes swept over my former living room, over strangers in what had been my sanctuary. I needed answers, and I needed them now. "Please, show me your paperwork," I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. They nodded, retrieving documents that confirmed their story. As I skimmed the fraudulent sale agreement, a cold realization dawned on me. Someone had orchestrated this, someone who wanted me out of this house, and possibly out of the way. "I'm sorry for this intrusion," I told the couple, my mind racing with the implications of what had happened. "You may have been scammed. I never sold this house. I've been the rightful owner for 50 years. The young woman's eyes widened, her hand flying to her mouth. "What are we going to do?" she whispered. "We're going to get to the bottom of this," I said, more to myself than to them. "I need to make some calls. Please, excuse me." I stepped outside, the fresh air doing little to quench the fire of betrayal burning inside me. Whoever was responsible for this, they had picked the wrong woman to mess with. As the newly elected governor, I had fought against corruption and deceit. Now, it seemed, the battle was more personal than I ever imagined. This was not just a theft of property, it was an assault on my life, and I would not rest until I had unraveled this conspiracy and reclaimed what was rightfully mine. Determined to unearth the truth, I reached out to an old friend, Sarah, who had since become a seasoned lawyer. Over coffee, amidst the clatter of the cafe, I shared the bizarre tale of my house being sold without my knowledge. Sarah, ever the skeptic, furrowed her brow as she sifted through the copies of the fraudulent documents I had collected from the young couple. "This looks like a clear case of forgery," Sarah said, her finger tracing the signatures that purported to be mine. "And the timing right after your election? This can't be a coincidence. It smells like a conspiracy." Her words sent chills down my spine. The weight of the governorship was already immense, and now this personal attack felt like a direct challenge to my resolve. We decided to delve deeper into the HOA's recent activities, suspecting that the threads of this plot might weave through the shadows of my political opponents. Sarah and I spent days poring over public records, emails, and meeting minutes from the HOA. We found inconsistencies in the dates and suspicious patterns of decisions that seemed to disproportionately affect properties owned by individuals outspoken in local politics. It was as if a puppeteer was pulling strings behind the scenes, manipulating the HOA to serve a darker agenda. One evening, as we sat in her office surrounded by mountains of paperwork, Sarah pointed out a recurring name, John Mallory. He was a new member of the HOA board, but had quickly ascended to a position of significant influence. Intrigued, we dug into his background and discovered he was not just a local realtor, but also had ties to a prominent developer known for aggressive takeovers of valuable land. Could Mallory be the link? I pondered aloud, feeling the pieces of the puzzle beginning to fit together. "It's possible," Sarah replied, her eyes narrowing. "And if he's working with developers, your house on that large lot could be a prime target for something bigger." Maybe they never expected the governor to fight back. Fueled by a growing sense of outrage, I decided to confront John Mallory directly. We arranged to meet under the guise of discussing HOA issues at a community center. He arrived, confident and smooth-talking, unaware of my suspicion. "Governor, what an honor it is to meet you under these circumstances," and his smile polished yet predatory. I cut to the chase. "Mr. Mallory, I'm here as a homeowner, not a governor. I want to discuss the illegal sale of my property," I stated, watching for any flicker of guilt in his expression. His eyes flickered, just a momentary lapse, but enough to confirm my suspicions. "Ah, was unfortunate, but I assure you, the board acted within the legal framework provided by the HOA, bylaws." "Bylaws that were manipulated," I shot back, holding his gaze. "And your sudden rise in the HOA, along with your connections to developers, doesn't look good." Mallory's composure slipped, revealing a flash of anger. "Look, politics is a messy business, Governor. Sometimes things happen that are out of our control." His words were a thinly veiled threat, but I was undeterred. "This isn't just politics, Mr. Mallory. This is my home and my life. And I will uncover the truth." Leaving the meeting, Sarah and I felt a mix of triumph and trepidation. It was clear now that this was more than a simple case of forgery. This was a coordinated attempt to displace me, to weaken me politically by striking at my personal life. But why? What was the ultimate goal? The answer came when Sarah received a tip from a contact within the city planning department. A new development project was proposed, one that would swallow up the neighborhood around my house, transforming it into commercial real estate gold. "They needed your house, the last piece of the puzzle," Sarah explained, her voice tense. The realization was staggering. My fight for my home was now a battle for my community, a battle against forces that sought to reshape the city for their gain. Armed with this knowledge, we prepared for the next phase, taking the fight to the courtroom and the court of public opinion. This battle was no longer just about a house. It was a fight for the soul of my community. And as governor, I was uniquely positioned to lead this fight. Not just for me, but for every homeowner who had ever felt overpowered by shadowy forces behind closed doors. This conspiracy would unravel, and I would be at the forefront, leading the charge. Sitting in the temporary calm of Sarah's law office, I found myself enveloped in a sea of old photographs and documents that spanned half a century. Each piece I touched seemed to pulse with echoes of laughter and whispers of past conversations. My house wasn't just a structure, it was a repository of my life's most cherished moments. As I sifted through a box labeled Memories, my fingers brushed against a photograph of my late husband and me, taken in the backyard during one of our infamous 4th of July barbecues. The laughter seemed almost audible, the smiles radiant and real. I remembered how the house had thrummed with life, friends gathering under the string lights, the air filled with the scent of grilled corn and the sound of fireworks. Each room of that house held a different chapter of my story. The kitchen, with its perpetually sunny windowsill where I'd nursed countless plants back to health, reflected my resilience. The living room, with its sprawling, comfortable sofa, had been a witness to my children's growth, their highs and lows, sprawled out in teenage angst and triumphs. The sturdy dining table had supported not just plates and silverware but elbows and textbooks, projects and dreams. Yet, amidst this tender nostalgia, a shadow crept in, casting long, sinister shapes over my memories. I realized that the violation of my home was not just a theft of property, but an assault on my very identity. Why me? The answer seemed increasingly tangled in my recent political success. As governor, I had initiated reforms that disrupted the status quo, stepping on the toes of those who had long played the system to their advantage. My thoughts were interrupted by another discovery. A series of emails printed out and forgotten. Conversations between HOA board members from years past. Among the mundane discussions about block parties and maintenance issues, a name kept resurfacing: John Mallory. His tone in the emails had gradually shifted from cooperative to coercive, and his suggestions increasingly pushed for aggressive financial policies. It struck me then that my journey to the governor's mansion might have been seen not just as a triumph, but as a threat. To individuals like Mallory, my influence as a political leader meant interference. Interference in lucrative deals masked as community development projects. My house, standing on valuable land, was a final bastion against their ambitions. As I dug deeper into the motives, the pieces began to slot into place with chilling precision. The forgery, the sale, the targeted displacement. It was a meticulously orchestrated act. They hadn't just stolen my home, they had attempted to destabilize the foundation I had built my life upon. But in their greed and haste, they had overlooked one thing: my resolve. I was not just a homeowner or a sentimental old woman clinging to her memories. I was a governor, a fighter seasoned by decades of public service. My memories, filled with love and laughter, also fortified me with strength and purpose. They reminded me of what I was fighting for: not just a piece of land, but justice and integrity. Emboldened by these reflections, I prepared for the next phase of my battle. With Sarah by my side, we mapped out a strategy not only to reclaim my home, but to expose the corruption that had permeated the HOA and threatened the fabric of my community. This wasn't just my fight anymore. It was a battle for every citizen who had ever felt overpowered by those who operate from the shadows. As I replaced the lid on the box of memories, I felt a renewed sense of determination. These memories weren't just echoes of the past. They were clarions calling me to action, urging me to stand firm, fight back, and prevail. With a sense of urgency pulsing through my veins, Sarah and I dove headfirst into the murky waters of legal warfare. The mission was clear: gather irrefutable evidence to prove that the sale of my home was a sham, a meticulously crafted deceit. Yet, with each step forward, we encountered barriers designed to make us falter. Our first move was to secure the complete records from the HOA office. Under the guise of routine gubernatorial oversight, we requested every document related to property transactions within the last year. The response was a masterclass in evasion. Files that should have been readily available were suddenly misplaced, and clerks who had initially been helpful now couldn't seem to meet my eyes. "Something's very wrong here," Sarah muttered as we left another frustrating meeting with the HOA's compliance officer, who'd offered nothing but apologies and empty promises of follow-ups. "They're stonewalling us at every turn." Determined not to be deterred, we changed our tactics. If the mountain would not come to Muhammad, Muhammad would go to the mountain. We decided to visit the city archives, hoping to find duplicates of the documents the HOA claimed were lost. What we found there only deepened the mystery. "Look at this," Sarah said, pointing to a ledger entry that didn't match the sale price. "Document in the papers provided by the young couple who thought they had bought my house. Either someone's terrible at math, or these figures have been doctored." Photographs of the ledger and other incriminating documents filled our growing file. Yet the most potent evidence remained elusive. The original sale agreement, which I knew had been forged, was nowhere to be found. It seemed as if it had vanished into thin air, likely hidden by those who feared its contents. As our investigation deepened, so did the threats. Anonymous calls filled with veiled warnings became a nightly occurrence. "Back off, or else." A distorted voice would hiss into the phone, sending shivers down my spine. But rather than scare me into submission, each threat only steeled my resolve. I knew I was getting closer to the truth. Our next step was to reach out to potential witnesses. The realtor who had handled the sale of my home, a middle-aged man with nervous eyes, agreed to meet over coffee. As Sarah and I gently prodded him with questions, his initial resistance crumbled. "I was told it was all above board," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "They said the owner had approved everything via email." "Did you ever meet the owner? Talk to her directly?" I pressed, knowing the answer. "No," he admitted, looking down at his trembling hands. I just assumed everything was legitimate." His admission was a breakthrough, but without physical proof, it would be his word against the HOA's. We needed something concrete, something undeniable. That breakthrough came unexpectedly. As we were leaving the realtor's office, a young assistant handed me a stack of files that she said had been found in a mislabeled box. Buried within them was a digital backup of emails between John Mallory and the developers. It was the smoking gun we had been desperate for, the link that connected the forged documents to a larger plan orchestrated by those who stood to profit from my displacement. Armed with this evidence, Sarah and I spent long nights preparing our case. Each document was a piece of the puzzle, each witness statement a testament to the greed and corruption that had invaded my life. The danger was real and ever-present, but so was our determination. As I lay in bed each night, replaying our progress, a mix of fear and anticipation filled me. We were on the edge of a precipice, the depths of which were unknown. But one thing was clear: we would either emerge victorious, bringing those responsible to justice, or be swallowed by the very darkness we sought to expose. But retreat was not an option. This fight was about more than just a house. It was about integrity, justice, and the very essence of community. And I was ready to see it through to the end. The discovery that a former friend, whom I once trusted, was entangled in the treachery that led to the sale of my house, was a bitter pill to swallow. Linda had been more than just a neighbor. We had shared confidences and supported each other through life's ups and downs. Now, as I stared at the evidence linking her to the HOA's deceitful maneuvers, the betrayal stung with fresh intensity. With the evidence in hand, I decided it was time to confront Linda directly. I needed answers, and I could not let personal feelings hinder the quest for truth. The confrontation was not just about legal implications. It was deeply personal, a chance to face a past intertwined with friendship and betrayal. I arranged to meet Linda at a local cafe, a neutral ground that had once been our regular spot for friendly chats. As I approached her, sitting alone at a corner table, her posture was tense, her eyes wary. The initial greetings were stiff, a far cry from our warm exchanges of years past. "Linda, I wish this meeting were under different circumstances," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "But I need to understand why you would be part of something so cruel." Linda's gaze faltered, and she sighed, a sound of resignation. "It started small," she admitted, her voice low. "I never thought it would go this far." As she spoke, the pieces of a painful puzzle began to fall into place. Linda recounted how her increasing involvement with the HOA had coincided with her growing resentment towards the political path I had chosen. Where she saw compromise and collaboration as weaknesses, I saw democratic essentials. Our differing views had strained our friendship, and when the opportunity arose to align herself with those who shared her ideology, including John Mallory, she took it. "It wasn't supposed to hurt you," Linda continued, her eyes not meeting mine. "It was business, a chance to be part of something bigger, to make a real impact." "But selling my home?" I pressed, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and sorrow. "How could you justify that?" Her response was a mixture of defensiveness and regret. "I was assured it would be legal, that you had other residences, and wouldn't be affected much. I didn't know it would turn out like this." The revelation did little to quench the sense of betrayal. Linda had allowed jealousy and political ambition to cloud her judgment, to justify actions that were ethically and legally indefensible. The conversation turned to the larger implications of her actions. It wasn't just about my house, it was about integrity, about the erosion of community trust. I needed Linda to understand the depth of her betrayal, not just to me, but to the entire community we both claimed to serve. As we parted, the air between us was thick with unspoken words and unresolved tensions. Linda had agreed to testify about the conspiracy, a small consolation in the face of such profound betrayal. Walking away from the cafe, I felt a complex mix of relief and heaviness. Confronting Linda had reopened old wounds but also provided crucial insights into the breadth of the conspiracy. Her testimony could be pivotal in the legal battles to come, offering a chance to right the wrongs and restore my and potentially others' faith in justice. The drive home was a reflective one. The betrayal had hurt deeply, cutting into the very fabric of my past. Yet, it had also reinforced my resolve. This confrontation, painful as it was, had steeled my spirit for the challenges ahead. It was a reminder of the cost of leadership and the price of standing up for one's beliefs. Now, more than ever, I was determined to fight not just for my home, but for the principle that no one should wield power at the expense of others' rights and dignity. The road ahead would be fraught with legal and emotional battles, but I was ready. Armed with the truth and fortified by my convictions, I would see this fight through to the end, for justice and for the community I swore to serve. The courthouse loomed large as I stepped through its towering doors, a symbol of justice that I hoped would serve its true purpose. Armed with our meticulously gathered evidence and bolstered by a steely resolve, Sarah and I were ready to challenge the HOA's deceit in a legal arena that promised neither favors nor easy victories. As we presented our case, the courtroom felt like an extension of the political battleground I had navigated throughout my career. Each day was fraught with challenges, legal objections from the defense, critical evidence scrutinized, and my credibility questioned. Despite the public nature of my role as governor, standing as a plaintiff in a lawsuit was an entirely different ordeal. It was personal, and it was invasive. Sarah was a fortress of legal acumen beside me, guiding the proceedings with precision. Your Honor, we intend to prove that the sale of my client's home was not only illegal, but part of a broader scheme orchestrated by the defendants to manipulate property values and displace community members for profit, she declared during her opening statement, setting the tone of our fight. The defendants, John Mallory and several HOA board members, countered with denials and legal posturing. Their lawyer, a seasoned litigator with a sharp tongue, tried to undermine my claims, suggesting that my absence during the election campaign had led to misunderstandings about my property management. I took the stand, recounting the shock of discovering strangers in my home and the subsequent betrayal I felt. My testimony was emotional yet factual. I detailed the forged documents, the suspicious activities of the HOA, and the personal conflicts that had spilled over into this legal dispute. The cross-examination was brutal, aiming to paint me as a neglectful homeowner who was unaware of her affairs. Isn't it true, Governor, that you were so consumed with your campaign that you neglected your fiscal responsibilities, including the payment of HOA dues? The defense lawyer pressed, his voice echoing through the silent courtroom. With a calm I barely felt, I responded, "On the contrary, my financial obligations, including those related to my home, have always been managed diligently. The records, as presented, are not just incorrect, they are fabricated." As the trial progressed, Sarah called several witnesses: the realtor, a reluctant John Mallory, and even Linda, whose testimony was pivotal. Under oath, Linda confirmed the manipulation within the HOA, driven by profit motives linked to real estate developers. Her voice trembled as she apologized for her role, admitting her regret. The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense, with the audience hanging on every word, aware that the outcome would have wider implications beyond just the return of my home. The media coverage was intense, painting the case as a David versus Goliath fight, a lone homeowner against the powerful corrupt machinations of a real estate cabal. As closing arguments approached, Sarah was succinct and powerful. "This case is about more than a property transaction. It's about the integrity of our community's governance. It's about whether power and greed can override the rights of one individual to securely own her home. The judge's deliberation felt interminable. When at last the day arrived for the verdict, the courtroom was packed. The judge pronounced the HOA's actions illegal and the sale null and void, a ruling that prompted a ripple of applause from the audience. An unusual breach of courtroom decorum, quickly silenced by the bailiff's sharp call for order. Victory was sweet but worn. As I walked out of the courthouse, the weight of the past months felt both lifted and heavier at the same time. I had won my home back, but the scars of this battle would linger. The fight had tested my resolve, but it had also reaffirmed my commitment to justice and transparency, not just in the halls of government, but in every aspect of civic life. The legal battles were over, but the work to rebuild trust and heal the community was just beginning. As governor, I knew my responsibilities were far-reaching, and this experience had only deepened my dedication to serve and protect. The gavel had barely fallen in the courtroom before the public's verdict began to echo through the media. Newspapers, online forums, and television reports were ablaze with the story of my legal battle, casting me alternately as a champion of the underdog and a governor distracted by personal vendettas. In coffee shops, on social media, and at town hall meetings, the citizens of my state debated not just the legality of the HOA's actions, but my priorities as their leader. Support came from unexpected quarters. Community groups who had long felt the overbearing weight of HOA restrictions rallied my side, viewing my fight as emblematic of their own struggles. "If it can happen to the governor, it can happen to any of us," became a rallying cry at protests demanding housing reforms and greater oversight of homeowners associations. Letters and emails poured into my office, many expressing solidarity. A retired veteran from a nearby town wrote, "Your fight is our fight. We stand with you, Governor." These messages were rays of light, energizing me, reminding me why I had ventured into the public arena in the first place, to serve and to shield those who felt voiceless. However, with support came substantial backlash. Critics argued that my focus on personal legal issues detracted from statewide concerns. A vocal faction believed that the governorship should remain above such disputes, concerned that my actions set a precedent for mixing personal affairs with public office. Editorials speculated about the implications of my involvement in the trial, suggesting it smacked of self-interest and questioning my ability to govern without bias. One particularly harsh critic, a prominent local businessman and occasional political commentator, took to the airwaves, accusing me of using state resources for personal gain. "While our governor fights for her mansion, our economic issues are left in the dust," he declared during a popular morning radio show. The dual nature of public opinion was a crucible, testing my convictions and my resilience. Each piece of criticism was a stone, each word of support a shield. The strain of this dichotomy was palpable, not just to me but to my team, who walked the tightrope of supporting my personal justice while steering the governor's office through ongoing policy challenges. The most poignant moment came during a public address, intended to discuss new economic initiatives, when a question from the crowd turned the focus back to my legal troubles. Standing at the podium, the room's eyes all on me, I took a deep breath and addressed the underlying currents of doubt. "I stand before you not just as a governor, but as a citizen of this state," I began, my voice clear and steady. "The fight I have undertaken is not just for my home, but for the principle that no one, no matter their position, should be above the law. Yes, I am the governor, but I am also a resident who has been wronged. I vow to you this has only strengthened my resolve to ensure our laws protect all citizens fairly and equally." My words seemed to resonate with many, bridging the gap between personal plight and public duty. However, skepticism remained, a reminder that my every action was under scrutiny, magnified by my role. As the days progressed, the balance of public opinion continued to sway, a barometer of societal values and expectations. Through it all, the support and the backlash served as constant reminders of the complexities of leadership. The support emboldened me, while the backlash tempered my strategies, ensuring I remained focused on the broader responsibilities of my office. Navigating this landscape of public opinion was not just about managing perceptions, but about reinforcing my commitment to governance, grounded in the ethics and accountability I had always championed. This episode, fraught with challenge, underscored the delicate dance of leadership, where every step impacts not just one's own path, but the path of a state and its people. The courtroom was silent, the kind of deep, expectant quiet that feels almost physical, pressing against one's ears. All eyes were on the judge as she prepared to deliver the verdict that would conclude weeks of intense legal struggle. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs, each beat a reminder of what was at stake. Not just my home, but my integrity, my office, and perhaps most poignantly, my belief in justice. As to the matter of the plaintiff against the Homeowners Association, the judge began, her voice steady and clear. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff. The sale of the property in question is hereby declared null and void, and the defendants are found guilty of fraud and conspiracy. A murmur rippled through the courtroom as the verdict was announced. Beside me, Sarah squeezed my hand, a gesture of shared triumph and relief. Yet, as I stood there, receiving nods and quiet congratulations from those around me, the victory felt bittersweet. The legal battle had taken its toll. It had exposed not just the corruption within the HOA, but also the vulnerabilities within our community. Neighbors had testified against neighbors, old friends had revealed themselves as conspirators, and throughout the trial, the division within the community had deepened, a schism that wouldn't easily heal. As I stepped out of the courtroom, the bright light of the media cameras flashed in my face, capturing the moment of triumph. "Governor, how do you feel about the verdict?" shouted a reporter over the din of questions being lobbed at me. "I am grateful," I started, my voice firm despite the fatigue that weighed on every word. "Grateful that justice was served today. But this is not just a personal victory. It is a reminder of our duty to uphold the law, to protect the rights of all citizens, and to ensure that no one, no matter their position or power, can undermine the principles of our community." My statement was met with nods and more flashes from cameras, but as I walked away, my mind was already turning over the work that lay ahead. Winning my house back was a symbolic victory, but the real challenge was restoring unity and trust among my constituents. The ride back to the governor's mansion was quiet. I looked out the window, watching as the familiar streets rolled by, each one leading back to the neighborhood that had been the center of so much controversy. I thought of my house, standing vacant now, waiting for me to return and breathe life back into its rooms. As governor, I knew my responsibilities extended far beyond my personal ordeals. The trial had highlighted systemic issues that needed addressing, from the oversight of homeowners associations to the transparency required in property transactions. These were issues I now planned to tackle head-on, ensuring that the pain our community had endured would lead to meaningful reforms. But more than policies and laws, I needed to mend the emotional fractures that had surfaced. Reconciliation would require time, patience, and a willingness from all sides to engage in honest, open dialogues. It would require community meetings, perhaps more painful conversations, and certainly a lot of listening. As my car pulled into the driveway of my now rightfully reclaimed home, I felt a mix of return and arrival. The battle was over, but the work of healing had just begun. I was home, but the sense of home had changed, colored now by the trials that had taken place within and beyond its walls. The victory was clear, legally defined and irrefutable, but the path forward was blurred with challenges yet to be faced. As I stood at my front door, key in hand, I knew that the true test of my leadership, of my courage and my commitment to my community was just starting. The verdict was a beginning, not an end, and the journey ahead was mine to lead. The key turned in the lock with a familiar click, a sound I had not heard for far too long. Stepping into the foyer of my home, the flood of sunlight through the bay windows washed over me, casting long, welcoming shadows across the hardwood floors. The house was unchanged on the surface, each room a capsule of cherished memories, yet everything felt profoundly different. As I wandered through the empty rooms, the echoes of the past mingled with the silence of the present. This house, once filled with laughter and life, had become a battleground of principles and legalities. Now, as I moved back in, it stood ready for a new chapter. Not just for me, but for the community it represented. I began the slow process of unpacking, each box a small testament to resilience. Photographs, books, and personal mementos were unwrapped and placed back into their old spots, though I handled them with a new sense of gratitude and a deeper understanding of their fragility. As I set each item in place, I reflected on the ordeal I had endured. the betrayal, the legal battles, and the public scrutiny. These experiences had not just been trials. They had been transformative, reshaping my understanding of leadership and justice. Now, with my second term as governor underway, I felt a renewed commitment to the people I served. The trial had exposed flaws within our legal and community system, gaps that allowed for manipulation and injustice. Addressing these issues would be at the forefront of my agenda. No resident should fear losing their home due to corruption or covert dealings. My policy initiatives would focus on transparency, reform, and the protection of homeowners' rights, ensuring robust checks and balances within homeowners associations across the state. But beyond the legislative reforms, there was a deeper need for healing within the community. The division the trial had caused was a wound that would not heal with laws alone. It required a personal touch, a series of community engagements and open dialogues. I planned town hall meetings, not as a politician speaking to voters, but as a neighbor reaching out to fellow citizens. We needed to rebuild trust, to weave back together the fabric of our community that had been torn by discord and suspicion. As the sun set, casting a golden glow through the leaves of the old oak tree in the backyard, I stepped outside. The air was crisp, a hint of autumn on the breeze. I thought about the young couple who had unwittingly been caught in this web of deceit. They, too, had been victims of this scheme. And part of my commitment to reform was ensuring that the vulnerable were never preyed upon like this again. Looking at the garden, where weeds had begun to claim the beds once filled with blooming flowers, I saw a metaphor for my current mission. Just as I would clear the garden and nurture it back to health, I would work to restore vitality and fairness to our governance system. My hands, once used to signing bills and directives, would now also tend to the soil, in a literal and figurative rebuilding of home and community. In the quiet of the evening, as I sat on the porch swing that had been a silent witness to years, I felt a profound connection to this place. This house had been my harbor in the storm, and now it would be my base as I launched initiatives aimed at healing and reforming. The road ahead was daunting, but the strength I had drawn from these very walls, from the love and trials they had witnessed, fortified me. This new beginning was not just a return to normalcy. It was an opportunity to foster resilience and justice. As governor, as a neighbor, and as a citizen, I was committed to ensuring that the legacy of this house and my time within it would be one of enduring strength and renewed hope. The journey ahead would be shared with my community, as we moved forward, not just rebuilding what was lost, but improving it together. Dive into the heart of justice with us. Stand up, speak out, and be the champion your community deserves. Every story of corruption unraveled strengthens the roots of democracy. Let's reclaim what's rightfully ours and ensure our voices aren't just heard, but can lead change. Join the movement. Your engagement is the shield and sword in the ongoing battle for integrity and fairness.